most recent banned and restricted announcement did a lot for Modern, but it sneakily did more things than you might think for Pioneer as well. Jegantha the Wellspring, yet another companion, was the solitary banned in the Pioneer format. Now, while this doesn't really change anything about a specific main deck configuration, it does shake up a lot of sideboards and sort of unlocks some cards that may not have been seen play before. It also hits a few decks in an unexpected way, making them slightly weaker overall by not having a free 5/5 every single game. Now, while we could make an entire video talking about the design of companions, this isn't that kind of video. We have a bunch have been banned across multiple formats, and the fact that only Kahira and Yorion are the remaining competitively played ones in Pioneer brings us to the first thing that this Jegantha ban does. It powers up two very specific deck shells, Azorius Control and Enigmatic Incarnation, both with and without the Fires of Invention, have gotten slightly stronger just because you can use this companion mechanic while other decks cannot. Control specifically wins out here, as both the 60 and 80 card versions still get to play at full strength with their companions, opting for Kahira and smaller decks, while Yorion allows for flicker shenanigans and sometimes makes cards like Portable Hole and Omen of the Seas a lot stronger to play. Likewise, having access to an extra card in your hand any way to win the game for Control is a strength that can't be underestimated. The enigmatic decks running Yorion also love to have that flicker effect in their deck at some point, with a Yorion flickering Fires of Invention to free you up to vomit a bunch of things on the board with your unspent mana, while flickering an Agent of Treachery in some build or Leyline Binding allows you to lock opponents out of things to do entirely. Now, an additional part of this BNR announcement, and even more than the fact that some decks still get to have companions and a small buff to them, is Jegantha's ban sees decks like Rakdos Prowess, Jund Sacrifice, variations of Gruul flavored decks, Selesnya and Multicolor Auras decks, and the Acererak combo getting weaker just by the fact that they've lost their companion backup plan. One of the underrated things about decks like Prowess or even the Auras decks was the fact that Jegantha gave you an extra target for all your pump spells in the later stages of the game that you basically had in your hand and couldn't be targeted, while giving you something to do with your mana when playing around sweepers and removal. In Jund Sacrifice decks, this played a similar role while also allowing you to have a second large threat alongside Yigra that could just turn sideways at your opponent and allow you to turn your small pings from things like Mayhem Devil into meaningful damage that could end a game quickly. Lastly, the Acererak combo decks lost a free legend they got to play with every game that both triggers Gwenna and adds mana in enough combinations to play a Kinnan and Acererak, a Rona, a Gwenna, and an Acererak, or just straight up providing all of the colors you need to cast a Troxa Grand Unifier. Having a 61st card and a Phantom 8th card in hand weakens all of these decks and makes some of their game plans much more linear without having just the slam a 5/5 for 5 backup plan. Now on the flip side though, losing Jegantha does mean that some decks have now unlocked a lot of cards that can be swapped around between the main deck and the sideboard, and this is a positive thing to having Jegantha banned. Now, Jegantha famously prevented you from having double pips of mana colors in your main deck, which meant that any decks that wanted cards like Sheoldred or the Demons package needed to forego using this card, which actually didn't hinder them at all, as they've been doing extremely well without Jegantha. Some decks even opted to run cards in their sideboard that would make them lose access to Jegantha in the subsequent sideboard games. However, putting these cards in was almost like face-up sideboarding if your opponent knew your deck list in even the slightest amount. Now, what I'm looking forward to is decks branching out and including cards that may not have been in there just because Jegantha as an extra main deck card and Phantom 8th card in hand was just that much better to have. Specifically, I'm wondering if they're going to be more Rakdos Prowess decks opting for Leyline of Resonance in the main deck, as this has become a little bit more all-in without the Elemental Elk hanging around. Likewise, I'm wondering if cards like the Meathook Massacre pop up in sideboards for decks like Jund Sacrifice, where the sweeper plays double duty as another way to help drain out your opponents in longer games. Opening up the Acer deck to legends with double costs, such as the aforementioned Sheoldred, could be something that pops up against more controlling decks and something that the deck may be interested in as a more solid backup plan than beat down sideways with elves, while Gruul decks have a number of double green beaters that they can play around with, and also like double red dragons and stuff obviously exist in Magic. Now, Leyline of the Void may pop up more frequently in lists instead of just specifically unlicensed hers thanks to no Jegantha, although hers still pretty much reigns supreme in the format when you only need to hit a couple of cards in graveyards versus making sure the entire thing is gone. You know, like, is it Phoenix or even like Azorius Oculus style decks don't really care if your entire graveyard is gone as long as you just target the thing that is trying to be reanimated that turn. Now, while I don't expect these cards to really power up or make up for the power that Jegantha left behind in these lists, it will mean that the sideboards can get a little bit more creative with options to attack other decks in the format, which is all I'm really looking for from this ban: diversity in main deck and sideboard answers specifically. Now, while Jegantha's banning may be overshadowed by the amount of changes that Modern underwent in this round of bans, I don't want the impact of this BNR on Pioneer to go unnoticed. Now, while the most popular decks in the room won't really see any changes to them, Rakta's Demons, Is It Phoenix, Selesnya Company, some of the Lotus Field combo decks, etc., it will have effects on the decks just below them on the tier list that may have been weaker or stronger matchups for these top decks. Overall, the card itself won't really change the metagame that much, but I do think that the ebb and flow of the construction of these decks that are losing Jegantha will have a slight impact on the metagame as a whole. Now, while we don't have any professional level events in the foreseeable future for Pioneer, I do expect to see subtle shifts in the Magic Online results over the next month or so as players start to experiment with different dual pip cards across some of their lists. So, what about you? Are you sad or happy to see Jegantha go the way of the Lurrus? What cards are you looking forward to now seeing or playing yourself now that you are free from the mana cost restriction prison that Jegantha put on your lists? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you are there, make sure to thumbs up the video to show YouTube that you still have me as a companion to your Magic the Gathering playing. Now, a quick shout out, speaking of companions, to my members for supporting this video as well as the channel as a whole. And if you are interested in getting access to the perks of membership, like Discord access and personal deck techs, you can click the join button right down below this video or on my channel page to find ways to show your devotion. As always, please tap that subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest deck techs, metagame analysis, and just Magic content from me in general. See you later.